Welcome back to Let's Make a Game, a channel about making computer role-playing games using the free program Twine and the Sugarcube format for Twine. In this video, I would like to continue talking about my current project of coding the combat system for a viewer's game. In particular, I'd like to talk about how I have coded a distinction between one-handed and two-handed weapons, putting restrictions on the carrying of two-handed weapons. So, as you can see, I've started a combat, gone into my inventory. The player character is holding a pistol in their main hand, nothing in their offhand, so the starting setup. We have a couple of options. We have a broom and a flame spray, but you'll notice that there's a couple of differences. First of all, the flame spray has this bracket 2H end bracket in its description, which indicates that it is a two-handed weapon. Secondly, it doesn't have the option to equip to the offhand. The reason for that is because the way I've decided to set up the inventory system and the system of holding weapons is that when you're holding a two-handed weapon, it's considered to be held in your main hand and your offhand is supporting it. So imagine a machine gun or something and you're sort of mostly holding it with one hand, but you're sort of supporting it with the other. And that has, of course, the consequence that you can't ever equip a two-handed weapon to your offhand. I can equip it to my favoured hand, and the broom sort of works as normal. I can put it in my favoured hand, swap it with a pistol, or equip it to my offhand, and then I'd have a pistol and a broom, but that's fine because they're both one-handed weapons. I can also swap hands. And you notice that if I swap hands, the flame spray, I don't have any buttons to do anything with it. Now, the reason for that is because the flame spray would need to be in my main hand, and I would need to have my offhand free to carry this because it's a two-handed weapon. But because I have a pistol, well, that hand isn't free, and therefore I'm not free to pick the flame spray. So I can either swap hands again, and now I can equip it to the favoured hand, because when you equip to a favoured hand, you automatically swap whatever's in here back. So I can do that. Or I could getting back to swap hands, I could have stowed the pistol, and then both my hands would be free, and that means I can equip the flame spray. It also means that when I have the flame spray, because it's a two-handed weapon, and because we've decided that two-handed weapons are always considered to be carried in the main hand, I can't swap hands. And that's true here, and it's also true if I return to the main screen. We'll see that I don't have the swap hands option anymore. So, in short, two-handed weapons are now two-handed. Previously they were exactly the same. It was just an entry in an array that didn't do anything, but I've now made them work as they should work. So that's what it does. I'm now going to spend the rest of the video talking about the code. So the code is in three places. We've got it in player character, inventory, that's where the most changes are, as you might expect. And we've also got one in story caption as well, which is the code that governs the sidebar. So let's look at that one first. This one's pretty simple. All it is that we just need to show that a weapon is two-handed. So in the cell after we print the description or the name of the weapon, not the description, so it might be pistol, machine gun, whatever it is. We then have this if. We look at WEA_OVR, which stands for weapon overview. That's a two-dimensional array. The first dimension is what weapon is it, and the second dimension is what aspect of the weapon are we looking at. What weapon is it? Well, we look at weapon 0, so we look at whatever weapon the player character is holding in their main hand. And the slot we're looking at is 3, which always has a value of either 1 or 2. And so if it equals 2, well, that's a two-handed weapon. So we print bracket 2 capital H end bracket, which is a little shorthand for two-handed weapon. Now, we don't print a space. Even though a space appears, there's a tab there, but there's not a space. because when Twine prints things on the same line but from two different commands, it will put a space in between them. And that can be really annoying if that's not what you want, but at the moment that is what we want. So if we put a space there, there would be two spaces in between the weapon name and the little indication of two-handedness. All right, so let's go to play a character. This is basically to do with the swap hands option. If you've got a two-handed weapon, you can't swap hands. Now, we already had this bit. We already had if weapon 0 does not equal, which is what that exclamation mark equals means. If weapon 0 does not equal offhand 0, then print swap hands. Because if those two are the same, that means that either you've got the same weapon, you've got two pistols or two brooms or two blunt machetes or whatever it may be, and so swapping them wouldn't do anything, or they're both equal to 0, meaning you've got nothing in either hand, and so what would you be swapping? So that's from the previous video, but we've now added another requirement, and that is if WEA_OVR weapon 03 is equal to 1. In other words, if we've got a two-handed weapon, we can't swap hands because we can never hold a two-handed weapon in our offhand. I will say, by the way, that nothing is counted as a one-handed weapon. You might think, well, that's a sort of zero-handed weapon, isn't it? But it sort of uses up one hand, and so it's coded as being one-handed. So everything has a value of either 1 or 2. Most of the changes are in inventory, which is where you might expect, because that's the screen that's to do with swapping out weapons. First of all, we need to indicate, when we're listing the weapons in the inventory, we need to indicate if a given weapon is two-handed. This works exactly the same as the previous code for getting this little 2H, except that instead of weapon 0, we get inventory 0Z. Inventory 0Z meaning this particular slot in character 0's inventory, character 0 being the player character. If we're looking at a two-handed weapon, tell them it's two-handed. The other thing we do is we've put, with this equipped to favoured hand and equipped to offhand, we've put some ifs around it to make sure that that option only appears in appropriate circumstances. So when can you equip to your favoured hand? Well, it's this or this, whereas the previous one uses an and. So this is an or, meaning do this if either of those things are true or both of them are true. If offhand 0 equals 0, meaning if you've got nothing in your other hand, you can definitely equip any weapon to your favoured hand. You can equip a one-handed weapon or a two-handed weapon. Or the other option is, if the weapon that we're looking at is one-handed, you can always equip to your favoured hand. Because it doesn't matter if you've got something else in your offhand. You might have a machete in your offhand, but you can still hold a pistol in your main hand because a pistol only requires one hand. It will only not print it if it's a two-handed weapon and you've got something in your offhand. And then the option to print to offhand is more restrictive. It's both of these things have to be true for it to print the button, whereas before only one of those things had to be true, one or two of them. So what has to be true here is if weapon overview infantry 0Z3 equals 1, in other words, if we're talking about a one-handed weapon, and if the handedness of the weapon in your main hand is 1. So to put that another way, if it's a two-handed weapon, you can never equip it to your offhand. And if you're holding a two-handed weapon in your main hand, you can never equip anything to your offhand. And we also have to have the same restriction on swapping hands that we have on the main screen, and that is from the previous video, if weapon 0 does not equal offhand 0, in other words, if you've got two different weapons in your hand, counting a fist or an empty hand as a weapon, essentially. So if you've got two different weapons in your hand, and if the weapon in your main hand is a one-handed weapon. If both those things are true, remembering that that a fist is a one-handed weapon for the purposes of this code. If both those things are true, you can swap hands, otherwise you can't. So that will all of that taken together will ensure that you never have a two-handed weapon in your offhand, only in your main hand, and that if you have a two-handed weapon in your main hand, you can never have anything in your offhand because you're using that other hand to support it. I should say, I don't think I'll call it equipped to favoured hand. I've sort of gone to calling it main hand instead. So I might change this to main hand in the version that I upload to itch.io. But anyway, I'll leave it there. So that is two-handedness. We have to deal with ammunition. We haven't done anything about ammunition thus far. We have done one-off weapons get used up, but we haven't done guns need bullets and using them reduces the number of bullets that they have. So that's probably what I'll do next. There's also some special cases for weapons that work a little bit differently. Like some weapons can attack more than one enemy. Like a machine gun, you can spray a machine gun and it attacks more than one enemy, stuff like that. But I'll probably start looking at ammunition next. But I will leave it there for now. I hope that was useful or interesting to at least some of you, and I hope you will tune in next time.